just about exactly at the very same time. Yesterday, we'd seen a drone attack from the Pakistani forces across several parts of Jammu as well as Rajasthan. Again, around 9 p.m., we're seeing Pakistan drones targeting Pathankot, Uri, Naugam, and areas in and around the LOC. So what we are seeing is a very similar pattern of Pakistan using nightfall, not only to do artillery fire that has continued for the last few days across the LOC, but using a second wave of drone attacks across 7 locations. All of them, we are told, have been repelled by our air defense systems. But the Pakistani drones, for the second consecutive day, escalating or attempting to escalate the situation with those drone attacks in several parts along the border. So clearly what you're seeing is that Pakistan, in the last 24 hours, if there was any hope of a de-escalation, that hasn't happened. India has said on more than one occasion, and that was reiterated at the MEA briefing today, reserves the right to respond in kind. Pakistan continuing to provoke both across the LOC and with these drone attacks. All of this building up, many fear, to pushing the situation up an escalatory spiral, which is really the concern. Indian defense air systems, as we've been saying, have repelled those Pakistani drones, but for the second consecutive day, those drones have attempted to cause great damage in the area. So what we've got is a situation where Pakistan simply doesn't seem to want to back down. Despite international pressure, we were told this afternoon back-channel talks were being attempted. We're being told that the Pakistani army leadership had met with the civilian leadership, including Prime Minister Shahbaz Sharif, and former Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif also attended one of those meetings, and there was some talk from the Pakistani side at the time that there could be back-channel talks taking place. But either way, as we've reached 9 p.m., Pakistan drones targeting different parts in the Jammu sector, in Araspura, in Uri, India intercepting those drones, in fact, repelling the Pakistani drones. So for the second consecutive day, what we've seen is provocation from the Pakistanis. India has made it clear on more than one occasion the response will be measured and will be focused only on retaliating in a... Mir Farid now joins me from Srinagar. Mir Farid, tell us what is the latest you're picking up?
Rajdeep, it's escalating again, and it seems the scenes of yesterday night, evening are being repeated today. Same pattern. It started with heavy arty fire all along the line of control, especially in Uri, Tangdar, Kupara, Naugam sector, and then also, if you talk of Jammu, Poonch, Rajouri, this was followed by loud explosions being heard in Jammu city. They were not drones this time around, but very close to the Jammu city falls the international border, and in Samba, Araspura sector, heavy artillery fire opened by Pakistani army, Indian army retaliating. And then to add to that, I can officially confirm this to you, defense sources have confirmed this, that drones have been intercepted by air defense. They are being engaged and brought down at least 3 sectors. Then there are also reports that at the Samba, Basantar Nala, there again there was heavy artillery fire. So it is escalating, and slowly new sectors are getting into this. But today, what is new is the international border for the first time is seeing heavy artillery fire. And we know international border, if you talk of Jammu, is very close to the city or the heart of the city or the town. And that is why they are hearing loud bangs. It's not drones this time around in main Jammu city, but the artillery shells that are causing huge noise and creating panic. Rajdeep.
Mir Farid there joining me with the very latest. We'll come to you and the entire team of reporters as the night goes through. The situation between India and Pakistan has been escalating by the day. And this has sent concerns not just in the subcontinent, but across the world. What happens next, and what does this escalating conflict between India and Pakistan mean for the world? Today I'm joined by one of the world's leading global commentators, Fareed Zakaria, hosts CNN's GPS show, columnist at the Washington Post, and a friend of ours. Thank you very much, Fareed Zakaria, for joining us in this very difficult moment. Two nuclear neighbors engaged in an escalating conflict. What does this mean, Fareed, for the world?
Well, it is always dangerous when you have two nuclear neighbors involved in this kind of tension. It's particularly worrying because this one does not seem to follow the pattern that you have seen really for the last 25 years. Ever since both India and Pakistan developed nuclear capacity, nuclear weapons capacity, there has been a tendency to have managed escalation and managed de-escalation, where both sides realize that there are dangers here of escalating and that it could get out of hand. And so there's always been a somewhat choreographed process by which these hostilities are managed. That does not appear to be happening here. And what worries me greatly is that in this environment, you could easily imagine a miscalculation, a misperception, a stray drone, a stray missile hitting, targets it was not intended to, and there do not seem to be mechanisms to be able to bring this down and bring this, to land this plane in a way that causes minimal harm, both to India and Pakistan, but to the broader environment.
I'll come to the ways in which this can be calmed down or de-escalated, but the fact is nuclear deterrence has held firm for more than 2 decades between India and Pakistan. But how long can that alone sustain it, Fareed, is the question, because you've got India now claiming that, look, this escalation was brought upon us by Pakistan and Pak-based terrorists who attacked innocent tourists in Pahalgam. That's where this started a couple of weeks ago. And the Indian position is very clear. We are going to retaliate this time, targeted attacks on terror infrastructure. Do you believe that's a position that India has the moral high ground to take this time?
Look, I do. I think that let's step back though and ask ourselves, what is the likely cause? What is the likely broader issue here that has animated this? Clearly, these moves emanated out of, from Pakistani-sponsored militias, whether directly or not. I think what is going on is you have a crisis of legitimacy in Pakistan. Let us be clear, Pakistan's most popular politician is in jail. The people who are responsible for putting him there, the Pakistani military, are deeply unpopular. Perhaps for the first time in a long time in Pakistani history, the Pakistani military does not have the kind of easy legitimacy that they've had. So one wonders whether part of these hostilities have been part of an effort to rally the Pakistani nation behind the government and in particular the military. Certainly the chief of army staff's comments 5 days before the attacks or a few days before the attacks would lend credence to this view. So what you have is a fundamental problem politically in Pakistan that might have erupted, and now India has to manage it. The fact that India may have the moral high ground does not absolve it, however, of maintaining the strategic high ground of trying to calm the situation. At the end of the day, India has the moral high ground, but it has the most to lose from a massive escalation here. Pakistan, if I can be honest, is already a basket case economy. There's not much, there's not much further to fall. India, on the other hand, is on a high growth trajectory right now. Peace and prosperity are very important to it. So it has the moral high ground, let it take the strategic high ground as well.
But even if we want to take the strategic high ground, India has made it more than clear on more than one occasion in the last few days, Fareed, that India's attacks are measured, focused, and are essentially not seeking to escalate. But the fact is the Pakistani military establishment, the army state, seems to be wanting an escalating conflict. You've heard General Asif Munir a few weeks ago saying Hindus and Muslims can't coexist, that the two-nation theory is still alive. Kashmir is the jugular vein. So you've got a military leadership in Pakistan that seems to be itching to broaden this conflict for whatever reason.
I think you're right, and that's why I pointed to this. This seems to emanate out of a desire in Pakistan to rally the country around the military. The challenge still remains. India has a lot to lose from this spiraling out of control. So, is there a way for it to be the more responsible party, to be to find a way to manage this down? If this blows up, nobody is going to care whose fault it was. It's like, imagine one of these massive traffic accidents. At the end of the day, there's going to be a huge amount of collateral damage, and as I say, India is the country that will bear the greatest cost, because it will derail India from what is otherwise a very, very powerful growth trajectory. In fact, look, India was poised to perhaps become the alternative to China is a manufacturing powerhouse. So all kinds of good things happening here. All I'm saying is, let's not forget that that's the goal. That the goal is to raise the living standards of Indians.
But how does India de-escalate when your neighbor seems to be constantly provoking? Even as you and I speak now, there have been more drone attacks from across the border. So it almost seems as if the enemy state on the other side, or Pakistan, is pushing India into a escalating spiral. How do you de-escalate when one side seems determined to escalate it further?
Part of the challenge here is that we have lost the United States as a kind of useful intermediary, as a country that could talk to both sides and try to manage this de-escalation down, so that you communicate to both sides, you calm them down. You saw Marco Rubio, the Secretary of State, lean into that kind of role initially, and that seemed to represent the traditional American role that the United States has played for the last several decades, every time one of these things has happened. But then a few hours later, J.D. Vance, the vice president, essentially washes his hands off the whole situation and says the U.S. doesn't want to get involved. So there you see the tension in America between the old traditional engaged superpower and the now more isolationist wing of the Republican Party and Vance, saying, we're washing our hands of this, do whatever you want. So because of that, you don't have a party that's trusted. And frankly, the U.S. is now less trusted by Pakistan than it was 10 or 15 years ago. The Pakistanis believe the U.S. has become entirely pro-Indian. So you have a problem. Normally in these situations, what is helpful is an intermediary, someone who can speak to both sides. And that doesn't exist right now.
You see, that is precisely the problem, Fareed, that you've struck at. The Trump administration, the impression we get in India, doesn't want to get deeply involved. I remember during Kargil, President Bill Clinton actually made a serious effort and eventually succeeded in brokering a peace. For Donald Trump, is the region not important? Is he too preoccupied with other issues? We heard the State Department spokesperson saying, yes, we all stand up against terror, but we want this tit-for-tat retaliatory action to stop, almost once again hyphenating India and Pakistan. Is the Trump administration conscious of Indian sensibilities? And is it a top priority for this administration, given that it's got issues both domestically and with the Russia-Ukraine conflict?
Yeah, I wouldn't read too much into the statements being put out by the State Department and by the Trump administration, because frankly, I think they're just not that interested in the world. It is a kind of Fortress America mentality, which says whatever's going on outside, let it happen. We don't really care very much. And the danger here is that this is a place where the United States has very effectively used its diplomatic and moral authority to calm tensions down. I think, I hope this is not the case, but this may be the new world we're in, a world without a superpower, a world without a country that tries to manage these tensions, and these local conflicts can therefore spiral. And that is the danger here very clearly.
So, given what you're saying, that the United States seems reluctant, dare I say, to play some kind of a global policeman, certainly in the context of South Asia, who does India turn to? because India has made it very clear in the past, we are not going to allow Pakistan to internationalize Kashmir, which has been an attempt made by the Pakistanis from time to time. Who does India turn to try and rein in the Pakistani military leadership from doing the kind of misadventure or miscalculation that you spoke about earlier?
Well, you ask a very good question. If they're with, this is a kind of broader question for the world in a way, because if you don't have the United States, who do you have? As you say, India is not going to trust. I mean, what are the options? The UN, India has a long history of not wanting the UN involved in this. China, certainly the Chinese have influence with Pakistan, but India would not trust China as a intermediary at all. The European Union, they're just too, they're not really a single entity. They don't have powerful geopolitical, geomilitary presence. So this is the post-American world that I worried about. You are seeing it in South Asia. And what it means is dangers of conflict spiraling out of control. I return to the reality. India is the bigger, the more powerful, the richer country, and it has the most to lose. So I'm hoping in some way India has the capacity. And you are right, Rajdeep. India is trying to signal a more measured approach. And you have to hope that at some point that Pakistan realizes that this is not a conflict they can win.
The other issue that this Indian leadership, Narendra Modi's leadership, says, look, we are not going to adopt a doctrine of strategic restraint of the kind that we saw when Mr. Vajpayee was Prime Minister, or Manmohan Singh. You saw what happened after 26/11 in Mumbai. India adopted a policy by and large of strategic interest while trying to diplomatically isolate Pakistan. India under Modi, Uri, then Balakot, now in Pahalgam, has gone up an escalatory ladder saying we'll give kinetic action. Enough is enough when it comes to park-based terror. Is that a dangerous approach at one level to take, or the right approach to take? Because how do you then stop the terror emanating out of Pakistan?
Look, this has been the problem for 50 years, as you know, Rajdeep. The Pakistani military has played this game of encouraging an ecosystem of militant groups and jihadis, some of which it controls, some of which it may not control, but it's spawned a whole world of terror and militancy. Now, how do you put the genie back in the bottle? The worry I have is that if you find it, I understand the logic behind hitting hard and all that. The danger is these things can spiral out of control. It's very easy to start a war. It is very hard to stop it. Think about all, the US in Iraq, in Afghanistan. Think of the Israelis now in Gaza, where they have been saying, where they perfectly understandably had the moral justification to hit back after the October 7th attack. But it's now been a year and a half. They keep, it's easy to start these things. It's very hard then to in some way wind them down.
But do you believe that kinetic action is the way to take on cross-border terrorism? As I said, in the past, India has tried various, India has been willing to adopt a policy of strategic restraint in the hope that Pakistan will see sense. But this jihadi factory continues to strike every now and then. So, I mean, given an option, are you saying that strategic restraint is still preferable even in the times that we live in? There's as you've said, there's the Israeli approach that's taken, that we're going to give them back as good as we get. And the Indian approach now under Prime Minister Modi seems to be taking us up an escalatory ladder without a sense of certainty as to what lies ahead. I think it's the uncertainty which is troubling. Is that, once again, Fareed, the right way to go?
See, what I worry about, Rajdeep, is yes, you can hit back, and I think in the short term, it is understandable. But then what is the longer term strategy, right? India has tried various approaches like this in the past. In the long run, the only strategy that seems to me to make sense is, yes, have deterrence, hit back hard, demonstrate that you can punch back as hard as you get punched, maybe even more. But then you need some diplomatic channels, some political process to reach some kind of strategic understanding with Pakistan. And What I would say is that's the area where I think India could do more. It is again because India is the bigger, the stronger, the richer party. Ultimately, you're only going to solve this with some kind of political dialogue and arrangement with Pakistan. It's not going to happen now. In the heat of this tension, in the heat of these Pakistani attacks, of course, there's going to be the Indians are going to strike back, and it's understandable. But my point is, in the long run,
Mhm.
is that the best way to solve this problem, or is there a path forward? And look, there's always been this fundamental problem. Pakistan needs this for the Pakistani military to play the central role in Pakistan society. That is the fundamental problem. That if I truly believe that what Imran Khan was doing was by
Mhm.
threatening the supremacy of the Pakistani military, he could have taken the country down a road where you could imagine a very different situation. But the
You
way
know,
Pakistan is governed, with the military at
mhm.
the heart of it, they need this conflict. So
you know,
that is
because
the
it
challenge.
Because it's often said, Fareed, that every country has an army. In Pakistan, the army has a country. And this has been a problem that Pakistan has had to wrestle with over the last 75 years, since 47, long periods where the army has completely dictated terms to the civilian leadership. Is that the fundamental skewed nature of Pakistan? Some call it a failed state, others call it a dysfunctional state. How would you see Pakistan today?
I think it's actually been described best by a Pakistani, Hussein Haqqani, who talked about the basically the reality of modern Pakistan in the last 40 years after Zia-ul Haq is that the Pakistani military realized that in order to bolster its legitimacy, it needed to ally with very extreme parts of the Islamic fundamentalist movement, very militant parts. And that Faustian bargain is at the heart of the rot that has been created, because it has created a kind of Frankenstein's monster that it sometimes controls, sometimes cannot control. And they've never found a way to dial back from that. And so that's the heart of the problem. And I do have a lot of sympathy, therefore, with people who say that India just needs to keep deterrence up, just keep, push back the exact amount you have to push back. We could argue about, because I don't want this to escalate, but I do think it is important to search for some kind of political, process that can at least, for example, in moments of crisis like this, where there would be a channel or a hotline or something like that. To me, what is so sad about this situation and so dangerous is not only are the two countries whipping themselves up into a nationalist fervor, there's very little communication, not just at the top between the leadership, not even at the military for miscommunication, but even the two media ecosystems of the two countries exist now in kind of two hermetically sealed systems. They know almost nothing about what's going on, the whole, which makes it all the more dangerous.
That's brilliantly put there, Fareed. I want to come to another aspect to it, which is China. You've mentioned already in the show so far on three different occasions, India emerging as this strong economy, possibly as China plus one, as an alternate to China for manufacturing and supply links. At a moment like this, China, which has often seen Pakistan as an ally, some would call it almost as a vassal state of China. Do you believe that the Chinese are playing also a dangerous game here, allowing this instability to perpetuate? Maybe, dare one say, and there's been speculation, goading Pakistan into this escalating conflict with India?
Yes, look, and I don't think it's strategically wise for the Chinese. Frankly, if the Chinese were to be more strategically enlightened about this, they would try to play the role of an honest broker. They would rein in the Pakistanis. They would use the enormous influence they have with Pakistan, and that would earn them some credibility with India. If the Chinese really want to think about playing a clever game here, the way to deal with the challenge from America would be to improve ties with India, to improve the relationship between India and China. In fact, they have fallen into an old pattern as far as I can see. Pakistan is essentially, I don't know, I'd call it a vassal state, but it's deeply dependent on China. And the military has become even more dependent as they worry about the fact that they're gonna lose America as their great weapon supplier. That is what the Pakistani military believes, that India will essentially become the American military power of choice. They will lose out, so they've moved to China. But from the Chinese point of view, I think it's a miscalculation. But Xi Jinping has made many bad foreign policy moves. This is just one of them.
India also, Fareed, in the last couple of weeks has looked at other ways in which to put pressure on Pakistan. There's diplomatic pressure. There's also the major move taken of holding the Indus Water Treaty in abeyance, seeing water as a weapon. Do you believe, therefore, in today's world, we need to look at other ways in which countries are put under pressure to fall in line? The world talks about zero tolerance against terror, but when it comes to Pak-based terror, it seems to have allowed Pakistan to get away with impunity for too long. Do you believe, therefore, weapons like water work? And why does the world, if I may ask that, not take Pak-based terror with the same seriousness as it would as terror directed against the Western world?
First, the Indus waters issue. I think you're exactly right. This is a very, and this is new, as you know, Rajdeep. India has not done this in the past, and it signals, I think, how seriously it takes this. I do believe that is the kind of thing that India should do to try to signal the seriousness of this situation, and also as a way to, eventually have some carrots on the table that it can provide were there to be some kind of political process by which you can in some way stabilize the situation. Look, as far as the way in which the world treats this, to be fair, the world generally has recognized that this is terrorism, that it does seem to have links to Pakistan. I would put it this way: the world doesn't like to get involved in this. That's different from saying the world is tolerating it. The world sees this as a messy situation between these two very powerful nationalistic countries. And, J.D. Vance's approach is probably speaks for a lot of people, which is we just don't want to get involved. It's an unfortunate approach because the US has always been the country that could diffuse the challenge.
Mm-hmm.
But in general, people look at this and say, we're going to just take two steps back and let the Indians and Pakistanis handle this.
The reason I came to the double standards about terror, it was very interesting when the Pakistani defense minister was interviewed on Sky News about questions about Pakistan sponsoring terror. What does he say? Look, we've been doing the dirty work for the United States and various Western nations, including Britain, for the last several decades, virtually pointing out that post the Afghan war in the late 70s, Pakistan became, in a sense, the epicenter of terror. And that's the concern. And that terror has not just been restricted now to attacks on India. Pakistan also has got caught up in this entire terror cycle. So, you see, the Western world, as Pakistan argues, used us in Afghanistan, and now, therefore, has no moral right, in a way, to tell us how to deal with the jihadi factories.
Well, I saw that interview, Rajdeep, and it illustrates precisely the problem, which is that there are still elements in the Pakistani military that believe that in fighting Islamic jihadi groups, the Pakistani military, were doing America a favor, rather than recognizing that by fighting these Pakistani these jihadi groups, whom they have funded and encouraged and spawned for 50, 70 years, they were saving their own country. And that what they really need to do is to do more of that and to dismantle these groups so that not only do they not pose a threat to India, they don't pose a threat to Pakistan and to the viability of a normal, stable, democratic country. I mean, the idea that the Pakistani military thinks that, the only reason they should be getting rid of crazy, nihilistic, religiously, millenarian terrorists is as a favor to the West is mind-boggling. So what you would like a society in which which these people are teeming all over the place? And by the way, he may have forgotten they've caused the deaths of tens of thousands of Pakistanis along the way, and they don't regard the Pakistani military as some great avatar, of virtue. The whole thing, to me, reflected the problem in Pakistan, which is they don't get the idea that having this this jihadi, fifth column or whatever you want to call it, is actually bad for Pakistan. It's not. It's not. It's. They should save their own country.
Perhaps also ensures the relevance of the Pakistan army. But Fareed, as we come to the end, I just want a couple of more quick questions. One, in Pahalgam, what worried people was that there was a religious profiling. People were killed after being asked their religion. And this, was perhaps a deliberate attempt by the jihadi factory and their sponsors in Pakistan to stoke a Hindu-Muslim divide in India. Fortunately, India has united. But is that a fear that you have, that somewhere down the line, this is another attempt by Pakistan to stir this Hindu-Muslim divide, all the more for India's political leadership to ensure religious harmony above all else?
Look, I worry about it, but Rajdeep, I think it's fair to say that the Indian Muslims have now been tested for 75 years on these issues. And really, there's very little sympathy as far as I can tell, in the Indian Muslim community for Pakistani terror, for Pakistani jihadists. Time and again, people worry. And in fact, there is virtually no support. I mean, look at and it's not just Pakistani terror, Islamic militancy in general. I mean, India has whatever it is, 150 million Muslims, and look around in the Islamic terror groups of the world of South Asia. There are virtually no Indian Muslim members. Indian Muslims have been loyal to the country from 1947, and I think this is one more demonstration of that.
My final question to Fareed, what for you is the worst case scenario of this conflict? What's the best case?
Worst case scenario is definitely that it could spiral into a larger war. There is a very real danger here because both sides are locked into a situation where they seem to be unable to find a way to climb down. That is exactly what causes countries to kind of sleepwalk into war. And when I sleepwalk, I mean nobody wants a wider war, but they can't see how they can back down. And that places both of them in a position where the only option is escalate, escalate, escalate. The best case scenario at this point is still that there is somehow this can turn into a descending spiral of violence rather than an ascending spiral of violence. In other words, each counterattack can become less pronounced than the next one. So that we're looking at this, Rajdeep, 2 or 3 days from now, and we notice, yes, there's a drone attack here, but the number, the incidence, the centrality is going down rather than up. And if that happens, it can wind itself down. It would be very helpful for the United States to get involved. But unfortunately, at this point, it looks like this is going to be more a case of self-management rather than, Washington managing it.
But you're not ruling out the possibility of Washington playing some kind of a role in the coming days. I mean, it's not as if Washington cannot play a role at the moment.
Look, I hope very much it does. And, yes, with the Trump administration, the beauty of this administration is it can reverse itself on a dime. If somebody, as Trump is walking to the helicopter, says, don't you think you should be involved more in the India-Pakistan thing? And he says, yes, absolutely. Suddenly the whole administration will turn on a dime and say, that's exactly what we meant to do. Let's call it in a constructive manner, there is enormous flexibility in Washington these days. What was black yesterday can be white tomorrow. So let's hope he changes his mind.
And if you were to give one piece of advice, if Narendra Modi ji or someone in the Indian establishment were to call you tonight and say, Fareed, what should we do next? What would you tell them?
Keep your eye on the prize. India is in a great trajectory. Peace and prosperity will take hundreds of millions of Indians out of poverty. Don't forget, that is the prize.
Okay. Fareed Zakaria, as always, I appreciate you joining us and speaking to us with such clarity and giving us a global perspective to what's been happening here in the subcontinent. Stay well, and thank you very much.
Always a pleasure, Rajdeep.
There you have Fareed Zakaria giving us a sense of what he feels lies ahead. Meanwhile, the big breaking news that's coming in is that second wave of drone attacks that's taken place. Pakistani drones targeting 11 locations today, scaling up in some parts by bringing in new areas into the locus of these drone attacks, targeting 11 locations. So for the second consecutive night, we've had more drone attacks. Pakistan drones, swarms destroyed by India's air defense systems in Udhampur. Pakistan civilian flights are operational during the drone attacks. And remember, today the Indian government accused Pakistan of using civil aircrafts as a shield during these drone attacks. Pakistani drones sighted in Samba, Rajouri, Amritsar. Heavy firing reportedly in parts of Amritsar. A blackout in Srinagar after that Pakistan drone strike. Indian air defense systems engaging the Pakistani drones. Pakistani drones targeting Jammu and Kashmir, Rajasthan, Punjab. A second wave of a drone attack now by Pakistan. So those is the worry at the moment. Okay, Gaurav Sawant and Sandeep Unithan join me again. Gaurav, second consecutive night. Clearly, Pakistan at one level escalating it, but at another level, virtually doing what they did last night in terms of using drone attacks. They haven't, there's artillery firing and drone attacks that they're doing, all of which have been repelled by the Indian side. What is Pakistan, what are you picking up? What does this mean in military terms, what Pakistan's doing?
So what Pakistan is doing right now are called probe missions. It's probing where India's air defenses are, how strong are India's air defenses, and where India's air defenses can be weak. So it's a probe mission, it's seeking, and then it'll carry out that big attack as and when it chooses to, Rajdeep. And this is a very precarious situation. But do keep in mind, Rajdeep, we've had 16 fatalities already after the 26 people were killed. So when those Pakistani terrorists singled out Hindus and massacred them, which led to this Operation Sindoor being mounted, after that they've killed Muslims, they've killed Christians, and they've killed Sikhs. So that's the way Pakistan state-sponsored radical Islamist terror is bleeding our people in Jammu and Kashmir, Rajdeep.
Okay, let's go straight to our correspondents. Kamaljit Sandu is joining us from somewhere close to the line of control. Sunilji Bhatt is joining us from an undisclosed location at the moment. Ashotosh Mishra is also with us. Let me come to each of you. Sunilji Bhatt, last night this time you were in a bunker, explosions around you. What are you hearing and seeing around you today?
Rajdeep, I am not revealing my exact location, but what I saw today was no different from yesterday. Even today, there were loud explosions in the skies of Jammu. And as per our sources in the security establishment, Pakistan once again sent drones to target military installations here in Jammu region. But our air defense system was already activated. Our Sudarshan Chakra was already activated, and it decimated Pakistan's drones that were sent to create mayhem in Jammu and Kashmir. But it's clear that Pakistan wants to escalate tensions in Jammu and Kashmir. And as per the latest interview of Pakistani defense minister, he is saying that now there is only one option, that is a full-fledged war. So Pakistan is rattled, it's frustrated, it's now targeting even civilian areas. We have seen that how in Poonch district of Jammu and Kashmir, innocent people have been targeted, non-combatants have been targeted, and the administration is making all kind of arrangements. People have been evacuated, relief camps have been set up, and all kind of facilities are being provided to the people there. Jammu and Kashmir Chief Minister Umar Abdullah, was in Srinagar. He came to Jammu today by road, and he visited the relief camps. He took stock of the situation. He also visited Government Medical College Jammu, where he also inquired about the health of the people who were injured in Pakistani shelling. But there is panic in Jammu city. That is why administration is time and again issuing advisories and asking people not to panic. They should remain alert. There is nothing to worry. The only thing they should do is that they should confine themselves to their homes. Security forces are doing their job. They are on high alert. But this evening there were siren sound after siren sound, and then there were loud explosions. I myself saw these explosions and the drone activity that was happening, and our alert troops on ground have foiled revealed the nefarious designs of the enemy. The situation remains very sensitive in Jammu. Its blackout is still there, but the administration is appealing to people that they should not panic. They should confine themselves to their homes. There is nothing to worry.
You're saying there's nothing to worry at the moment. Let me bring Kamaljit Sandu in at the moment. Kamaljit, you've also had a tough 2 days. What do you pick? Is this an escalation over yesterday or very similar?
Well, it's quite similar to what happened yesterday. These are surveillance drones. These are swarm drones. This is something of a mischief done by Pakistan because remember, this is what they're trying to test patience of India at this point of time. Remember, multi-city drone attack which is taking place. But remember, these are not with payloads. So in particular, these are there as part of spies. And this is what an anticipated move by them is. As per intelligence, this could be a deception because they eventually can kind of target other cities as well. The other is that if they're targeting 36 locations as they did yesterday with 300 to 400 these kind of drones being sent across, it also means that they could eventually launch an official target just about in few of the locations. So this is what is being thought out by intelligence agencies, but clearly all troops are alert, especially at line of control. Remember, there is a dual problem here because one, there's a heavy artillery shelling, especially across line of control, maybe in Uri and Pune sectors, the other sectors being also impacted. The other bit is obviously the latest is the conventional warfare where drones have made an entry and the sort of mischief being done by Pakistan at this point of time. But remember, this is only a short span of time where forces can really react to it, and that is why all the air defense system has already been activated. But the next few hours or days could be extremely crucial. We were already anticipating 24 to 48 hours, but remember, Pakistan has already said that this is not it. That they said once we will respond, India would know, the world would know. So something is definitely in the offing. We don't know what it is, but meanwhile it is Indian forces preparedness which is in place, and that is why they're very quickly countering these particular drones which are coming into the Indian airspace.
Okay, we also have Ashotosh Mishra joining us. Ashutosh, you're also at an undisclosed location, presumably blackouts there as well. What are you hearing around you?
Rajdeep, just a short while ago, we heard artillery firing in Naushera sector. So Naushera sector being a very large this sector. In fact, drones were also spotted passing towards another sector from this area. In fact, intermittent, we can hear the medium arms being fired and also shelling, artillery shelling, which is a very loud noise that can be heard, and that's exactly why we're taking shelter in the safe areas. So clearly, it's a time when the people are literally panicked and scared. There is a sense of fear, and even in those areas like Arispura and other where they haven't heard at least more than a decade these kind of firing or these kind of aggression by Pakistan, and this is continuously happening 2 days from Jammu to entire western sector. That Pakistan, the way it is engaging, and subsequently, of course, there is a response by proportionate response by the Indian Armed Forces as well. The Air Force striking down the source of. But clearly, what we say that whatever able to send so far, Pakistan, it is not ready to back off. And even on today that we see for at least 30 minutes, the way they are showing the aggression, there is a evacuation process. Let me also give you the brief detail about the operation that were carried out. The entire line of control area where we are in somewhere these sectors. I've been traveling all these areas. There's a preparedness to deal with such kind of. And remember, Rajdeep, there was always experts been saying that now even the conventional war like this will be only fought by the air assets, and thus we see the cheap drones, the swarm drones, and which were easy to understand. It is probably provided by Turkey because they have the expertise in these kind of swarm drone making, and that's we have seen they are also providing to Iran and other such nation.
Right.
Now these drones are being attacked, targeting the military installations, targeting the airstrips that we see. There were massive evacuation that were done by the administration. People have been evacuated. The blackout has been announced. All these areas there is no electricity to ensure that these drones, we camouflage our territory, we camouflage and to make a literally blind to the any projectile that is come, or even the fighter jets if they at all dare to enter in the Indian territory.
Right. Okay. I appreciate all of you joining us. Stay safe. I want to ask both Sandeep and Gaurav the big question. What is Pakistan up to with these drone attacks? Given, Sandeep, that yesterday they didn't inflict any real material damage on the ground or cause any casualties, what is Pakistan doing? Is it provoking India to try and go up the escalatory ladder, something that India has been stoutly resisting for the last couple of days?
Absolutely, Rajiv. What they're trying to do is basically, provoke us, needle us, and as Gaurav was saying, probe our air defenses as well. Probe our defenses, map where the radars are, where the missile systems are, how quickly the air defense systems, the artillery are able to, respond. All of this is being watched very closely. But the other dangerous thing, Rajdeep, I see is that they're trying to lull us into some kind of predictable behavior where they do this night after night, and before you know it, there could be a surprise attack, something that out of the normal. This is what militaries do usually. They lull the adversary into a kind of set pattern of predictable behavior, and then before you know it, the strike comes through. And that is what possibly the Pakistan military is doing. So I completely understand why the Indian side is treating all of these attacks, these drone incursions, even though they're not armed, they're treating them with the seriousness that they deserve. Because it's a very, very carefully thought out strategy. It's a low cost strategy on Pakistan's part right now. Most of these drones are very cheap. They cost, a couple of $100. But the kind of effort that we are, doing in acquiring these targets, shooting off ammunition and all that, they're trying to make this into a low-cost, long attrition game. Basically what they're doing, Rajdeep, is back in the day, many years back, it used to be a small arms fire along the line of control and sometimes in the international border as well. Pakistan has gradually moved up from small arms into these kind of drone incursions, to cause panic, to terrorize the civilian population. And, when you see air defense guns going off, sirens, blaring, blackouts being declared, that has an effect on the population. And that seems to be Pakistan's immediate game for the present, Rajdeep.
Gaurav, it's interesting. Most of these drones are Turkish made. Give us a sense of what kind of equipment does the Pakistani military arsenal possess? Are these drones now an integral part of what their arsenal is?
Drones are an absolute disruptive technology. They're a game changer. Pakistan has invested heavily in drones. And Rajdeep, this is actually the Hamas playbook that Pakistan has also adopted. And clearly, they're learning from the terrorists. And that's exactly how Hamas targets Israel, fires a lot of rockets, uses drones in a way. The entire Iron Dome system gets activated in Israel. But, India is actually a step ahead, reading this technology and responding. If you notice, Rajdeep, all the way from Leh to Sir Creek, which is from Ladakh to Gujarat, India has both kinetic and non-kinetic means that are being adopted. So some of these are being taken down through jammers. India is also assessing Pakistan. And India is systematically degrading Pakistan's warfighting abilities while being reactive. How? First, their air defense system around Lahore was taken down, something that was admitted. And today, again, on record, India said that 4 kamikaze drones were mounted and 1 air defense system was taken down in Pakistan's Punjab province. Now, these are very expensive air defense systems that Pakistan has. They cost anything between 1,600 to 1,800 crore rupees. And where is the replacement? So that is where Pakistan also becomes equally vulnerable should there be a counter-assault from the Indian side. So both sides are literally testing each other's capabilities.
Hold your thoughts, gentlemen. After India, just to tell you what's been happening on the ground through the day. Because after India launched a precision counter-strike in response to Pakistan's unprovoked attack on military installations on the 9th of May 8th, Islamabad hit back and has been hitting back not at the armed forces, but at innocent civilians. Heavy shelling raining down on villages near the LOC, especially in Poonch, leaving behind a trail of destructions. Homes shattered, lives lost, and wounds that run far deeper than just the physical. Tears, trauma, and irreversible loss. That's what Pakistan's provocation has cost the people of the border areas. Take a look at today's special report from the ground.
Relentless artillery shelling by Pakistan along the line of control. In the line of fire, innocent civilians. Newly married, Rishi and Shruti recount how Thursday night turned out to be a night of horror for them. A shell landed close to their house in Rajouri district, causing much damage.
रात का मंजर क्या था? आप लोगों ने ड्रोन देखा, आपने शेल गिरते देखा, आप लोग क्या हुआ? क्योंकि जान बचाना भी जरूरी है।
जी मैम, जान तो हमने बचाई है। रात को 1:30-2 बजे लगभग यहाँ पे फायरिंग जो है शुरू हो गई थी, तो हमने बहुत मुश्किल से यहाँ पे जान बचाई, छुप के अपने आप को मतलब कमरे में वहाँ पे जान बचाना पड़ा हमें। वो तो बिल्कुल जस्ट घर के सामने जो है ये विस्फोट हुआ है, तो बहुत मुश्किल था हमारे लिए। तो ये शायद फर्स्ट टाइम था, इससे पहले कभी नहीं हुआ। यहाँ पे सारी हिंदू कम्युनिटीज है, ऐसा कभी नहीं हुआ, दिस फर्स्ट टाइम।
Several houses in the region were hit.
रात को कोई पता चला था कोई 20 के करीब इधर बम गिरे हैं जरा, कुछ मकानों के ऊपर तो नहीं गिरे, आगे पीछे गिरे हैं, उसकी वजह से मकान भी उसकी चपेट में आ गया है।
तो आप जो रिव्यू करते हैं कोई कॉम्पनसेशन वगैरह?
हाँ जी, कॉम्पनसेशन के लिए आए हैं, इधर लिस्टें बना रहे हैं उनकी, कितना नुकसान हुआ वो, उसको वेरीफाई करने के बाद हम ऊपर सबमिट कराएंगे उसकी रिपोर्ट।
Many took shelter in a nearby bunker.
हमारा जो घर था वो भी ऐसे ही हो गया है, टीनू वगैरह था वो भी उड़ गई है। बहुत बुरी हालत से हम रह रहे हैं इधर। हमारा कुछ किया जाए, हम यही बात बोलते हैं बस। हम कहाँ रहे कहाँ नहीं रहे, छोटे छोटे बच्चे भी हैं।
Poonch is the worst hit.
Multiple shelling, only this house got affected, which received at least 2 shellings, and all these areas were under the fire of the Pakistani shellings when the army started, indiscriminate firing by using unconventional mortars, which are usually used in a convention war. And 2 kids were passing exactly on the day early morning, which also came under the fire and the impact, and 2 children died.
वो इस गली से जैसे बाहर आए, इस गली में आगे वाली गली में, इधर से पता नहीं फिर कहीं से दूर से उड़कर आया कुछ या कुछ है। वो दोनों बच्चे जो हैं, एक बेटी थी एक बेटा 12-13 साल के, वो दोनों उधर ढेर हो गए, और उनकी जो मदर थी वो थोड़ी आगे थी, और उनके जो फादर साहब थे तो वो पीछे थे। उनका भी ये बाजू कट गया। आप मुझे लगता है वो अमृतसर में या शायद जम्मू से रेफर कर दिए आगे, तो उनको इधर पेट में भी लगी है। उनकी भी कंडीशन जो है काफी बहुत खराब कंडीशन है।
Villagers are counting losses after 2 days of mayhem. Many victims of shelling were shifted from Salamabad village in Uri to Baramulla for treatment. Zeenat, injured in the attack, breaks down when asked about her house.
राशन जल गया, कुछ लगाने के लिए कुछ नहीं रहा, कपड़ा नहीं, कुछ नहीं, घर कुछ नहीं निकाल पाए। घर मेरे आंखों के सामने जल रहा था, मुझे तो ब्रेड चल रहा था, मैं क्या करती उस टाइम। सब कुछ खत्म हो गया हमारे घर में, कुछ नहीं रहा, कुछ नहीं, सिर्फ मुश्किल से जान बची है बस, और कुछ नहीं।
With Pakistan suffering major setbacks in the last 2 days of conflict, incidentally sparked off by the terror attack on tourists in Pahalgam on April 22nd, villages along the line of control are likely to face more heat in the coming days. With Ashotosh Mishra, Kamaljit Sandu and Amit Bhardwaj, Bureau Report, India Today.
Okay, the other big news at the moment is that India's Foreign Minister, External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar has reached the Prime Minister's residence, conversation there with the NSA. There have been reports since this afternoon of some attempt made at back-channel talks. We heard that yesterday as well. But those diplomatic moves have not made much headway, and Pakistan clearly, as we've been saying, has been trying to push India up the escalatory spiral. The other big story, of course, is that in all these drone attacks, Gaurav, there has been no damage on the ground or to civilians. So while Pakistan continues to violate the ceasefire in Uri, Poonch and Jammu, the truth of the matter is, purely in terms of damage done, very little. So it seems more psychological, just to send out this message every night that we are still almost in war mode, if I may use the word, with India, or in conflict mode with India.
It indeed is, Rajdeep, and very serious conflict mode. Look at the manner in which all along India's border belt with Pakistan, Airports have been shut down, 24 airports shut down till the 15th morning. That's point one. Point two, each night there's a blackout. Each night markets, and look at that Sector 17 market in Chandigarh, bustling market till 10:30, 11 at night, shut down at 5. So you're absolutely right that something's also cooking. But this is something that plays out two ways, Rajdeep. While a lot of information from Pakistan is sketchy, but the fact that there have been strikes in Pakistan, including at the air defense system, and the fact that the defense minister comes up with a lame excuse that they didn't switch on their radars because they didn't want to give away their position, does seem to indicate that Pakistan remains in a state of disarray. But since it is a radical Islamist terror state, it knows how to, wade through that disarray. We are a prosperous democracy, so that's where the conflict comes. They don't have much to lose. We have a lot to lose, but then we also have a lot to gain, Rajdeep.
Fareed Zakaria made the point to me, and I think that, needs reiteration. India is actually in a sweet spot at the moment. Yes. India is in a position at the moment to take the economy forward. We do not want war or the prospect of war or an escalating conflict to derail us from our primary goal, which is the economy. So that is the challenge in a way that India has at the moment. But I'm joined by my colleague Akshita Nandgopal at the moment from the newsroom. Akshita, what do you have for us?
Rajdeep, we, had a mention by the Foreign Secretary, Mr. Vikram Misri, in his briefing this evening, where he mentioned how last night, during the failed attempts by Pakistan to target our civilian settlements and military establishments with drones and missiles, you also had civilian aircraft moving in Pakistan airspace at the same time. So we decided to track down and see if that's the case today as well. And look what we have here. Now, I'll highlight a couple of things for you in this particular map, where we're tracking live flight movement along north and west of India, completely empty because we've shut down our airports, not risking civilian aircraft traveling in this particular area now. Contrast that to Pakistan right now, Rajdeep, Gaurav. You do see movement of civilian aircraft. What I particularly want to highlight here is this particular aircraft, very, very close to the border, headed to Lahore, in fact. This is a flight which is right now headed to Lahore. It's a Boeing 777. So again, very, very close to where these drone and missile strikes are happening. What India highlighted is exactly this, that last night too, just as Pakistan was firing these drones, missiles at us, you had a flight, a civilian aircraft moving towards Lahore. And therefore, the IAF, the Indian Air Force, exercised maximum restraint to ensure that there will be no chance of a civilian aircraft being hit by any counter that we also put forth. So same tactic essentially that Pakistan is using again, where they keep their airspace open, allow civilian aircraft to move through, putting their own civilians also at risk as a result.
Right, there you've got Akshita giving us those details. That is very worrying. What was told in that briefing, that Pakistan was using civilian aircraft as shields for these drone attacks. Explain that, Sandeep, for us. What does that mean?
Well, Rajdeep, as Gaurav just said, that when there are tensions, nations, especially when you have a dense AD environment, you have threats, drones, missiles, fighter jets being flown around, nations usually shut down their airspace, as India has done. We've shut down 24 airports. There's an entire swath of Indian territory where you won't see aircraft flying, right from Jammu and Kashmir all the way down to Gujarat. That's nearly 3,000 kilometers of the border with Pakistan. But Pakistan, after closing its airspace on the first day, has chosen to open its airspace to commercial aircraft, thereby providing their actions like these drone strikes, these drone probing missions, covering them, shielding them from possible retaliation by India. And this is a very dangerous situation, Rajdeep. It complicates our response to Pakistan's drone incursions on possibly their military retaliation as well, because what would happen, we all know what happened in Ukraine about 10 years back when there was an air defense missile that brought down MH15, a Malaysian airliner. And that's why, passengers, aircraft usually steer clear of conflict zones like this one. But in this case, Pakistan has chosen, it seems, to endanger civilian aircraft by allowing them to fly with impunity, as Akshita has just shown on that flight radar display.